Hello fellow cinema enthusiasts, my name is Christina and welcome to another Let's Get Reelz movie review. Today is my segment I like to call What's on Netflix, when I tell you what is on Netflix that maybe you've never heard of or you just haven't seen yet and you want to watch a movie. And here is where I tell you what movies or TV shows on Netflix that you should check out that are worth watching. For today's What's on Netflix, I am reviewing one of my absolute favorite movies ever. It is called Midnight in Paris. It's by Woody Allen. It's from a couple of years ago, but it always has my heart, this movie. I absolutely adore it, and here is why. Midnight in Paris is about a movie writer named Gil Pender, played by Owen Wilson, and Gil is a little bit lost. He's been writing movies, but he wants to write a book, and his manuscript is about this nostalgia shop and how, you know, he thinks that the past is better than what they're living in the present. He is in Paris with his fiance, who is a total bitch on wheels. Inez is her name, played by Rachel McAdams. And her family, who are they're terrible. As I said, Inez is a bitch on wheels. She's so miserable. The whole family just, abuses Gil and, verbally abuses him. They just berate him and everything. And Gil is always, off in his head. He's always, he's very optimistic, and in a way, he sees things differently than Inez. I think Inez and her parents are more practical, but also very uptight and very entitled. So Gil, he has this idea that Paris in the 20s is the ideal time in history and one of just the greatest times to have ever been. And he would love to go back in time to the 20s, to Paris in 1920s, to see all these great artists and all these great writers such as Hemingway and the Fitzgeralds and, the musicians. You have Cole Porter at that time, and he would love to go back to that. So one night after he splits off with Inez, he decides to go back and walk to the hotel instead of going out with her and this teacher that she had in college. He just doesn't want to deal with them. So as he's walking, he comes down this one alley, and this old car from the 1920s comes rolling by as the clock strikes midnight. And he's taken to this party where all of a sudden he sees Hemingway, he sees the Fitzgeralds, he sees Cole Porter, and they're the real things. They are the actual real people. And he's like, I'm in a dream. I can't believe this. He thinks he's been drugged or that he was drinking too much. But Hemingway says that he's going to take Gil to see Gertrude Stein and have Gertrude Stein read over his manuscript. And he's like, oh my God, this is great. This is so amazing. And he just cannot wrap his head around it. He's so excited. Gil tries to show Inez what he was talking about, that he did meet Hemingway. He knows the Fitzgeralds now and, this world of 1920s Paris, but she's like, I don't believe you. And just as it strikes midnight, she's off and Gil is out all night. He goes to parties, all these raucous, crazy 1920s parties that were so carefree. He hangs out with Hemingway again. He sees Picasso, he sees Matisse. It's just absolutely amazing. And there's so much more that goes on in Midnight in Paris. It's really great. Gil finds out things about himself, things about the present, and he just comes, I think, to see himself in a different light. That's how I interpret Midnight in Paris. And I love sitting through this movie so much. I have a degree in art history. If you can see some of my books right over here, I love the subject so much, and I really do honestly like Paris in the 1920s as well. I think it was a very interesting time. The arts definitely flourished out there. There was so much going on in Paris in the 20s. It was just a place to be. You had all these great artists then. You had Jean Cocteau, you had Man Ray. In the 30s in Paris, you also, at the late 20s, early 30s, you had Lee Miller, who is my favorite photographer ever, favorite, all-around historical figure. I absolutely love her so much. She was in Paris working with Man Ray and falling in love with all these artists as well. And that's what I like about Midnight in Paris too, is because for me it gets my imagination going, and it really makes me think like, what time period would I like to go back to? You know, if I could, I think I would probably go back to Paris in the 20s like Gil, but I would also like to stick around for some of the 30s, because as I said, my heart of hearts in historical terms, Lee Miller was more in the 30s. She started working with Man Ray more in the 30s, and I would just love to meet her. I would love to just meet all the surrealists and go to Paris before war broke out and before it became totally bonkers and occupied by the Germans. The cast was really great. Woody Allen directed this movie and wrote it as well. I don't know if he had a hand in the cast, but the cast was just so brilliant. You had Corey Stoll, who was like beyond brilliant as Hemingway. Like, when I think of Hemingway, I don't think of the real man. I think of Corey Stoll's characterization of Ernest Hemingway. He was just so freaking good. This was the first movie I had ever seen Corey Stoll in, and I love him so much as Hemingway. There's one scene that will always be my favorite. Whenever it comes up, I get so excited and I start laughing. As Hemingway, he's at this party, he's already blasted a little bit, and like some of the other characters just walk away from him and he's left alone. He goes, "Who wants to fight?" And I'm like, oh my god, that from the moment I first saw this movie, that was my favorite scene, just because it was totally crazy. Marion Cotillard, I did not mention her, but she is a character in this movie. She is supposed to be one of Picasso's muses, and oh my god, I just love her. She had such a perfect face, and just like, she's the perfect Parisian, 1920s Parisian woman in this film. And oh my god, I mean, who doesn't love Marion Cotillard? The woman could act out like just anything, and she's so brilliant, she's so perfect, she was great in this part. Rachel McAdams, as much as her character was a bitch, I have to give it to the girl. She's just a very good actress. I really, really enjoy her. And I don't know who the actor is who plays Man Ray. Man Ray comes up in a short scene. He says, "I see a photograph," when Gil is explaining his impossible situation, that he's from the future, but he's in love with a woman from the past, and how can he like reconcile that? And there's a few different artists. He's talking to Dali, by the way, in this scene, and Dali's just like, "I am Dali," and he goes, "I see a rhinoceros," and Man Ray's there and he goes, "I see a photograph," and he's like, "Well, of course you see a photograph." Love that scene, because the guy who plays Man Ray looks exactly like Man Ray. He's a little bit skinnier in the face, but I mean, spot on. And Adrian Brody as Dali, I think he ranks up there with Corey Stoll as Hemingway. Like, I cannot think of Salvador Dali now without thinking of Adrian Brody going, "I am Dali, and I see a rhinoceros," and like, that's it. That's like, that's all I think of now whenever I hear of Salvador Dali. It was a really, really good scene. So that was my ramble of Midnight in Paris. More than a review, I just love this movie so much. I could really have some really awesome discussions about this, because I love art history, and I love just learning about history and Paris in the 20s and 30s and everything. It was just, it's such an amazing city, and you know, just the history of it during those 2 decades is absolutely fascinating. So if you guys have seen Midnight in Paris and you happen to like this ramble in any way, please give this video a thumbs up. Leave your comments down below if you have seen Midnight in Paris. What are your thoughts? What time period would you like to go back to? Any time period. You know, where would you like to go? What would you like to do? Who would you like to meet? Let me know there. And also in the comments, if you have any suggestions of what I should watch next, be them new or old movies, leave them there. And if I pick your movie and I watch it and I review it, I'll give you shout outs. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for future Let's Get Reelz movie reviews, because that is what I like to do here. And as always, keep watching movies and stay absolutely fabulous.